Have you ever heard of the Hudson River, Hudson Bay, or the Hudson Strait? These massive waterways in North America all share a name, but not many people know the tragic story of the man they're named after, Henry Hudson. He was an English explorer whose relentless search for a shortcut to Asia led him to chart new territories, claim land for empires, and ultimately meet a mysterious and grim end. Let's dive into the story of his 4 legendary voyages. Our story begins in England around the year 1565 with the birth of Henry Hudson. We don't know much about his early life, but he emerges in the historical record as a seasoned and ambitious captain at the dawn of the 17th century. This was the age of discovery, a time when European powers were racing to find faster, safer trade routes to the riches of Asia, the so-called Indies. The overland routes were long and dangerous, and the southern sea routes around Africa and South America were controlled by the Spanish and Portuguese. So, English and Dutch merchants were obsessed with a tantalizing idea: a northern passage. Could a ship sail over the top of the world, either northeast over Russia or northwest over Canada, to reach the Pacific Ocean? This was the question that would define Henry Hudson's career. In 1607, Hudson secured his first major command. He was hired by an English trading firm, the Muscovy Company, to find that northeast passage. With a small crew, including his own young son, John, he set sail. He didn't head straight for Russia, though. He had a radical theory. He believed that the ocean near the North Pole might be ice-free in the summer, offering a direct route across the top of the globe. So he pushed his ship, the Hopewell, north, along the coast of Greenland. He sailed further north than almost any European before him, reaching the edge of the vast Arctic ice pack. He even sighted new land, which he named New Land, now known as. He saw whales and walruses, sparking a profitable whaling industry for England, but he found no passage. The impenetrable wall of ice forced him to turn back. The voyage was a commercial failure, but it established Hudson's reputation as a daring and capable Arctic navigator. Undeterred, the Muscovy Company sponsored him again the next year, 1608. This time, he would try a more conventional route, searching for a passage north of Russia, between the islands of Spitsbergen and Novaya Zemlya. Once again, Hudson found himself battling the unforgiving Arctic. He sailed east for weeks, probing the edge of the ice sheet, looking for any opening, but the ice was a solid, impassable barrier. Frustrated, his crew grew restless in the bitter cold. Realizing the futility of the search, Hudson had no choice but to return to England, empty-handed for a second time. His English backers were losing faith. It seemed the Northeast Passage was a dead end, at least with the ships of the day. After 2 failures, Hudson's prospects in England looked bleak, but his reputation had spread across the English Channel. In 1609, he received a new offer, this time from the powerful Dutch East India Company. They, too, were desperate for a northern route to Asia and were impressed by Hudson's experience. They gave him command of a small but nimble ship called the Havmahane, or Halfmoon in English. His orders were clear: try again for the Northeast Passage around Russia. But Hudson had other ideas. He had been corresponding with Captain John Smith, the famous leader of the Jamestown colony in Virginia. Smith had told him rumors of a possible sea passage that cut through the North American continent, somewhere north of Virginia. So, after setting sail from Amsterdam, Hudson once again encountered the familiar Arctic ice, blocking his path eastward. This time, instead of turning back, he made a bold, unauthorized decision. He turned his ship around and steered it west, clear across the Atlantic Ocean, toward North America. It was a huge gamble, directly violating his orders. After a long journey, the Half Moon reached the coast of what is now North Carolina and began sailing north, exploring the coastline. He entered Delaware Bay and then continued north until he found a massive, promising river. This was the river that would one day bear his name. Believing this could be the legendary Northwest Passage, he sailed the Half Moon upriver. He traveled about 150 miles inland, all the way to the site of modern-day Albany, New York. Along the way, he encountered and traded with various Native American groups, exchanges that were sometimes friendly, sometimes tense. He marveled at the beauty and richness of the valley with its thick forests and abundant wildlife. He soon realized, however, that the river was getting shallower. This was not a passage to the Pacific, but simply a great river. Though he failed to find the passage, his exploration was hugely significant. He had claimed the entire river valley for his Dutch employers, laying the groundwork for the Dutch colony of New Netherland and the bustling trading post that would eventually become New York City. He had stumbled upon one of the most valuable pieces of real estate on the continent. When Hudson returned to Europe, he didn't sail to the Netherlands. He docked in England, where the authorities, furious that an Englishman was exploring for a rival power, briefly detained him and impounded his ship's log. But the news of his discovery was out, and English investors were intrigued. If the Dutch could claim such a promising territory, why couldn't they? This set the stage for Hudson's fourth and final voyage. In 1610, with new backing from a syndicate of English merchants, including the Virginia Company and the British East India Company, Hudson set sail once more. This time, he commanded a ship named the Discovery. His mission? To find the Northwest Passage, the very route he had sought on his own initiative the year before. He returned to the waters north of the continent, navigating through a treacherous, ice-filled channel. This channel, now known as the Hudson Strait, led him into a vast, open body of salt water. He had found it. He must have thought this was the Pacific Ocean at last. For weeks, he sailed south, exploring the eastern coast of this immense sea, which we now call Hudson Bay. But as autumn approached, the enormity of his discovery became a curse. This wasn't the Pacific. It was a gigantic, deadened bay. As the weather turned colder, the crew urged him to find a safe place to winter or to turn back for England. But Hudson, obsessed with finding an exit to the west, pushed onward until it was too late. In early November, the Discovery became trapped in the ice of James Bay at the southern end of Hudson Bay. The crew was forced to endure a brutal Canadian winter, unprepared and far from home. Food ran low, and scurvy, a disease caused by vitamin deficiency, began to take its toll. Tempers flared, and morale plummeted. Hudson was accused of hoarding food and playing favorites, and his relationship with his crew completely broke down. When the ice finally broke in the spring of 1611, the crew was desperate to go home. Hudson, however, still wanted to continue the search. This was the final straw. On a bleak June morning, the simmering resentment exploded into open mutiny. A group of crewmen, led by Henry Green and Robert Jute, seized control of the ship. They forced Captain Hudson, his teenage son John, and 7 other crewmen, those who were either sick or loyal to Hudson, into a small open boat called a shallop. They cast them adrift in the middle of the vast icy bay with few supplies. The mutineers then sailed the Discovery back towards England. Henry Hudson and the men with him were never seen or heard from again. What happened to them in that small boat is one of history's great unsolved mysteries. Did they starve? Did they freeze to death? Did they perish in a storm? Or did they make it to shore only to face an even worse fate? We will never know. Their story ends their loss to the unforgiving wilderness they had helped to reveal to the world. Of the mutineers who returned to England, only a few survived the journey. They were put on trial for mutiny, but because they were the only living witnesses who knew the location of the supposed Northwest Passage, they were never convicted of murder. Their accounts are the only reason we know the story of Hudson's final days. Henry Hudson's legacy is complex. He was a brilliant and fearless navigator, but a poor leader of men. He never found the northern passage he so desperately sought. In 4 voyages, he failed to achieve his primary objective. Yet, his explorations had profound consequences. His voyages for England gave them a claim to the vast territory around Hudson Bay, which became a lucrative center for the fur trade for centuries. His voyage for the Dutch gave them their claim to the Hudson River Valley and led directly to the founding of New Amsterdam, which the English would later capture and rename New York. He didn't find a route to Asia, but he opened up huge swaths of North America to European trade and colonization, changing the continent forever. And his name is now etched across the map, a permanent reminder of his ambition, his discoveries, and his tragic, mysterious fate. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about history's most fascinating explorers. Let us know in the comments what other historical figures you'd like to learn about. See you next time.